Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast, episode 175. I'm Steve Smith. Tonight, we're going to be talking to Dave Anderson. To our listeners, he needs no introduction. To those people listening to the podcast for the first time, I would say easily he is one of the most accomplished tennis teachers in the US of A, in the world for that matter, and he has the record to prove it. Let me give him a call. He put together a list for do's and don'ts for parents, and I said, well, we're going to do that. We need to have a do's and don'ts for teaching pros. How's it go? Parents talk about pros, pros talk about parents. So for your tennis treasure chest, more golden nuggets.
Hello.
Dave Anderson.
Yeah.
The regular on our podcast. Appreciate you taking all the time. And I appreciate also the do's and don'ts. I got a lot of positive feedback, the do's and don'ts for parents. And what I said just before we came on air, mentioned that how's it go? Pros talk about parents, parents talk about pros. The do's and don'ts. That actually goes a long ways. I don't speak German, but I spent a lot of time in Germany. Nicht so, sondern so. Not this, rather this. Make these lengthy videotapes. In a lot of ways, they shouldn't be so verbose, but people are so confused. You have to be very persuasive. But then in the end, say, don't do this, do this. Remember disco dancing?
Mm-hmm.
That was a line I used to do. Disco here and disco there, Mm-hmm. But you want to start with the do's or the don'ts for tennis teaching professionals?
We can rattle off some of the do's and they kind of tie in together, like you said.
Okay.
But we can start with the do's.
Well, no inside jokes. But did Freddie Foreman write this for you?
I didn't consult with Freddie, but I mainly collaborate with him on more worldly things like music and art and hair.
With Freddie, for our listeners, no inside jokes, but Freddie, they're both from Minot, North Dakota. And I think, Freddie's taller, better looking, more hair, good on the drums, good on the guitar, sing. He's better at like 12 out of 13 sports, but I think the 13th one was tennis, but I think Freddie's caught up. We need to have that exhibition I've been talking about for a long time.
Yeah, we need to fly him in. I will make time to play that exhibition, only if it's streamed live though. He wouldn't have a chance.
I know you said
I'm pretty sure my wife could beat him now.
You said so many nice things about Mike Carter, but same thing, ditto. It's good to have a Freddie around. Paul McDonald.
Yeah, put Freddie or Mike at any club in America, or every club in America, and tennis is growing out of its seams.
Yeah, Paul McDonald used to call him instant party. So Jenna, she's a better player than you now?
She's into it. She's been around tennis her whole life. As you know, you knew us when we weren't even married. And, here she is at this point picking it up. And, when the way she just navigates through tennis, even though she's, competing 3-5-ish level, but, has wins even at some 4-0 players. And after about 3 years, I mean, the way she navigates on a tennis court, it makes her look like she's been playing her whole life. She's got a one-handed backhand. And,
all right.
Just in her ready position and her rituals. And you can just tell she's just watched a lot of tennis in her life.
Well, also too, the flexibility, whether yoga or fitness, that helps too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, she's still fit as a fiddle. It's unbelievable, really.
And are you the coach?
Pretty disciplined. No, I'm lower on that list than Freddie is behind me in all the sports. She works with, she's on so many different teams and all that, and they do drills and everything. But yeah, actually, that's what I'm doing. I hope she doesn't listen to this, but for Christmas, she always tells people I'm too busy for her, so I'm gonna clear one slot a week, and I'm gonna work with her technique.
All right.
1 hour a week.
Jim Martz, longtime owner, operator of the magazine Florida Tennis, and I don't believe it's complete. I haven't talked to him in some time now. I was, within 6 months ago, I had asked him about his book. He was going to write a book on quotes, Arthur Ashe quotes, and one was, he had called me several times for Arthur Ashe quotes, but one was "Never teach your spouse."
Yeah,
Arthur Ashe.
Yeah, I think at this stage of the game with us, it can work, but maybe at other points in our 36 years of marriage, it may not have went over quite so well.
Go ahead, give us a do. Tennis teaching professionals.
So, well, and I'll preface everything by saying I have a lot of respect, admiration for people who want to go into the tennis coaching business or coaching in general. It's a noble profession, but for tennis coaches tonight, doing some of the do's, some things that I think can help really make the career more productive, more meaningful. Number one, to begin your career path with an apprenticeship mentality. And beside that, I put a 10-year process. I think in the history of everything, having that apprenticeship mentality and just putting yourself around people and situations where you can acquire the skills to be really effective. And I think some people do that for a short time and they become much more competent than those who don't. But to truly do it, and obviously the earlier you start it, the better. And if you're already in the profession, and it's never too late to do it. And again, that's kind of what the GreatBase can do, even if it's an indirect apprenticeship. It can give you some ideas and wisdom that you may not be able to acquire really on your own. So I think that's very important mentality to develop.
No, I like the word the phrase "pay your dues." Apprenticeship, 10 years. Malcolm Gladwell in the book Outliers, the story of success, the story of circumstance. 1,000 hours a year for 10 years. The 10,000 hour rule. I really believe to be a tennis teacher, just like a tennis player or a tennis parent, 10 years. Again, back to Arthur Ashe, 3 years to be a fair player, 5 years to be a good player, 10 years to be a great player. And, if you think in decades, if I can make it through this year, I'll be 70. That's only 7 decades. They go by so fast.
Mm-hmm.
With, I think also, a thought for me for 10 years is that, well, if you haven't taught 10 years, you should have a lesson plan. If you've taught more than 10 years, then you can have a guideline with, but yeah, I just think there's way too much winging. There's not enough prep. Go ahead. Number 2.
Yeah, and it's hard.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard for people too to, I think, develop that apprenticeship mentality because the way the sport, as people come into the profession, the way that they're paid, and they're paid primarily through being on court, trying to make a living that way, and carving out the profession could maybe help that out, but that's another topic that I think people could do other things to remedy that inside of our profession. The salaries usually get paid to people that are off the court, and I think that it could be blended right from the point of entry, which would allow people a little bit more wiggle room to do an effective apprenticeship.
Say that again about on-court, off-court.
Well, I think salaries get allocated. You see a lot of pros working to, in a sense, get off the court. At some point in their career path. And for many, the sooner the better, it seems. And I think that those salaries that often sit at the top, and typically you see a director, who teaches maybe none or not at all, or maybe, under 5-10 hours a week, that sits on a big salary. I think those salaries could be divided differently, and everybody could contribute to the teaching, and it would also teach some administrative skills maybe early on to people, but also give them a supplemental income in a sense that may offer the time for them to do more effective apprenticeships from teachers as well. But it's just not the way our industry works.
With obviously every situation is different, case by case study. But I think that many of the people that work off the court, if they are just they're really motivated to get away from the ball hopper and just be a briefcase off the court pro, their business overall, all aspects of their business will probably be more service based than education based.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you get too far away from the court, I mean, how can you really ensure there's a quality product, quality education? I think one thing with pandemic and now people working remotely, you and I go way back, and we first were together studying tennis. There was a number of fellow students who were making a career change or had retired from the military. I think people in tennis teaching, they should realize that, it's a bonus if you have a playing background, but you don't need to have a playing background.
100%. Yeah.
I was one time I was working for Tennis Corporation of America, and two people I hired, a gal for early childhood development, and a guy help with men's programming, and they weren't players. And, everyone was laughing at me, but a year later, they both had generated more revenue than anybody else on staff.
Mm-hmm.
They had skills to bring from other professions.
Yeah, definitely.
How about number 2, David Letterman, working down the list.
Number 2, develop an obsession with learning the science and the art of teaching tennis. Yeah. I'll let you go.
Well, it is both. I always tell people, for example, on the serve, if you can't sleep at night, you toss and turn, but on the serve, you turn and toss. And you and I spent time training tennis coaches together. It's okay, one word lesson, just a one word lesson, and so there is an art. How can you say it and say it a better way, or how many ways can you say it the same way? But you definitely have to combine both. With the science, I think that's where follow science. I do think that even all these years later, physics dictates what happens to a tennis ball. You don't have to be a physicist, but the ball is going to go the way the strings face. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, that as you get into anything, whatever profession it is, but I think in tennis teaching, I think it's got to go beyond the lesson court. And, I think that there's so much out there and available. There's good information out there. If one were to just take Tennis Intelligence Applied and slowly go through it, and then just every 6 months review it, and then through some of the resources, some of the pillars that are a part of the GreatBase, whether Vandermeer, Braden, Lair, guys like Groppel, who wasn't mentioned, but I think that you have to become obsessed with it. I think you have to have that Kobe Bryant mentality of studying everything you're doing, and it can really accelerate your level of efficiency as far as what you're doing as a tennis coach. I think that there's not enough awareness, I think, of maybe the levels, the levels within the game, and then the levels within the teaching profession. And we're all in it together, but just like we're very aware that Fed, Djokovic, and Rafa are different than the rest of the crops out there. There's differences in tennis teaching too. And I think to try to become the best you can be, you have to be a little obsessive with it.
Yeah, I think make tennis your universe. How's it go? All work and no play made Jack a dull boy. But you are in the people business. It should be people first and profit second. And you really want to help people out. Continued education. You just can't.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as a player. I always say program plus. No program develops a player. It's what you do on your own. And same thing with a tennis coach. Are you going to go the distance? And it's really mind-boggling that someone thinks that they can come and do an apprenticeship here. And think, well, yeah, I'll come in for a weekend and I'll get a good handle on things. And it takes longer than that. I like the word shallow and the word deep. To take a deep dive to really go in depth, and not just to have a shallow understanding. With people that have studied the information that we've assembled, we have parents. I tell pros I train, I said, you have to understand, there's going to, like here where we are, there's going to be some parents that visit. That actually happened. I just was doing this traveling clinic, and we had, a few parents that I've known for 10 years, and now their kids are older, and they came and to just be part of it. And I was traveling with an intern and a student assistant. I said, you have to realize, I said, and I think that's why you need to speak to an audience as well. There's always someone, it could be a physicist, a biomechanist. There's always someone in the audience that's forgot more about the subject than you know. And if you have that mentality, you'll be humble. But I just think there's no instant coffee. Not when you're trying to become a competent, highly competent tennis teaching professional.
Yeah, nobody begins their path as a master.
Yeah, with sure. How's it go? You're writing your own biography. Number 3, study top coaches from other sports. Often character development is culturally stronger. Knock on wood. That's so true. Go ahead.
Well, I think we often talk about it. I mean, I think you can learn from other sports. I love watching high school football practice when we lived in Allen, one of the top high school programs in America, and watching their system that they taught from really what used to be Pop Warner, but it was just from young grades upward. I loved watching the group dynamics. I loved the specificity, watching the defensive coaches working with the different players on defense and quarterback coaches, all of that. And I think you can learn a lot from the gymnastics when you go to a very intensive, school for gymnastics. And as you know, here where we lived in Allen, there were 2 gold medalists, Nastia Lukin and then Carly Patterson, that were from there. And visiting that WOGA, World Olympic Gymnastics Academy, and seeing the culture and the discipline that they established from a very young age in all the different classes, from the equivalent of early childhood all the way up to the Olympic athletes that were trying to get on the team. And I think that if you go, through any city in America and you look at junior tennis programs, there isn't the same culture. I think we can learn a lot from other sports, and for some reason, and I think it's just because parents write a check, that we have become very inhibited in regard to running a very structured and disciplined program to try to teach disciplines. You have to have a disciplined program to try to acquire disciplines and skills, but I think that's become less and less the norm in our tennis culture.
Talk a little bit about Jordan Spieth.
Yeah, Jordan Spieth grew up here at Brookhaven Country Club, and I run into the gentleman that was very responsible for a lot of his development through his youth, Joey, and he's a great coach that still he literally coaches from sunrise to sunset. And the guy just loves coaching golf. And Jordan Spieth, when I remember watching him, and I didn't know him at all, but I remember watching him. He was always golfing with these two kids that I coached. That they went to the same Jesuit private school, and I didn't think anything about it. And then suddenly he broke out. But I had asked Joey about it, and he said that you'd never really notice anything about Jordan until until there was something on the line, when they would do a game or drill related to the skill in golf and put something on it. He became a different animal. And, he was a multi-sporter. I know that. Family was very athletic, had a sports background.
I know
but just a great competitor.
Sister with special needs, I believe.
Yeah.
But when you and I first met back in the 80s, everybody played high school tennis. And the high school tennis kids, they were around all the athletes. And it was a big deal to get the leather jacket. I don't know how you describe it, where just the sleeves were made of leather.
Yeah.
I think that's gone away, but I do think that, tennis kids many times are just around tennis kids. You would check your memory. I know you have a very good one. Name of the coach. He's based in Texas. He had 3 boys who played, I think, Austin Tennis Academy. I was watching
Doug Davis.
Doug Davis. There you go. I was watching Ashley Weinhold play tennis, and he asked me, who I was watching. And I said, Ashley Weinhold. I said, our parents were part of what I did, what I was doing for 5 years, and then he knew who he was, and we chatted, and I tell people all the time, he was at the Eddie Herr, and he said, Steve, we're standing among the weakest people on the planet. And I hate to beat up tennis kids, but why don't you comment off his comment?
I really like Doug Davis as far as his attitude and approach. I mean, I've seen him reprimand players and parents. It was impressive. And traveled a bit with him when his son Blake was playing doubles with one of the players I coached. And I mean, he developed 3 pretty good tennis players inside of his house. And I think that he was very intensive on skill and character development, and we've talked about that. We've talked about this aspect. It was funny it had to be 15 years ago. We were at a tournament, and we started talking about, he kind of saw the changes coming, back then, as did some of us. And he said, you better brace yourself. He goes, because different times are coming in our coaching world. And he's still at it, though. He's still at it, going strong. I don't think he coaches as much down at the Austin Tennis Academy, but I think he certainly loved the game.
I know one of his boys, just with one of our students, was just practicing our place in Tampa at one point years ago, and I think one of his sons, I'm gonna guess it Brandon, is just pulling a name out of the hat, but that played with Austin Krejcik Austin. They just the families helped each other out as far as the challenges of getting one kid from point A to point B. Yeah, I do think anytime you have to wear a helmet, how's it go? Collision sports, contact sports, not contact sports. But now I think it's amazing. A lot of kids, they don't play any other sports, especially when they're really young. Just learning to be on a team. I think a lot of kids will go off to college and they don't really know how to be a teammate.
Yeah, locker room talk, locker room jockocracy. All of these things are being lost in this generation for sure.
Yeah. With number 4, film your students and document progress. Utilize video and analyze constantly. Strokes, matches, mental, and footwork.
Yeah, I mean, I was joking with you earlier about VHS and all that, but I kind of like those days of VHS, because when we started here 30 years ago, I used to just have a VHS tape for each student. And, it was the time and date were stamped in there. And, it was I believe we did it quarterly, where we just made sure we documented each person quarterly. Now, we use the phones and we do that, and we have a place we store it, but I still don't feel it's as effective as it was back in the VHS days. But, I think that the biggest mistake that we make here, is we don't, document all four aspects really of the, we do a ton of video analysis in regard to the strokes. Sitting down and analyzing matches is something that I think is so critical, studying the film. After the Dallas Cowboys pulled out that win the other night, and knowing they're going to play the Philadelphia Eagles in a huge game on Sunday night here in Dallas, that you just know that Monday morning. They just went right to work on Philadelphia. They probably didn't even talk about the Seattle game, and it was just boom, studying film on Philadelphia while their bodies were recovering. And tennis players don't do that. And it's just, I was talking about this earlier with a parent. Tennis tournaments are a hard time to discuss anything because there's so much emotion. And, but if you can, study film, it can help you, a little bit more fact-based and keep the emotion out of it. And I think the mental components, filming them, that Swing Vision app that I use, I like it for certain things, because you can, one part of it, you can replay the match, and it'll only replay the points from the moment the serves hit to the end of the point. And, these kids then can watch a recap of their match play in 12 minutes. But then I thought, well, Swing Vision should make a similar feature on that, where it only begins right when the point ends, and it just focuses on the players, between points. And I know you've done that, and I've done that. And, just showing the body language, the rituals, how the player is managing themselves in the 20-ish seconds that they're doing between points. I think that'd be a great addition to that Swing Vision app. But then footwork and physical. Go ahead, Steve.
No, I interrupt. Sorry. With VHS, some of the listeners, younger ones, may not even know what that is, but it's amazing. I think now, with everybody having the iPhone in their pocket, it's almost like there's less filming. I can remember when it was reel to reel, and I tell a story once in a while, not that often, but you'd go in and it was just like all this tape was on the floor like spaghetti, and then you had to go back and be very careful to get it back on each reel. But we used to have to cut it and tape it, and I have 3 older brothers. I don't think when they came up in ice hockey, I don't think they ever saw themselves on VHS. But yeah, I one time I was working in Rochester, where Kodak, who didn't really make the transition to digital, but our program was sponsored by Kodak, and we had each player had a technical tape and a tactical tape, and we had a special room, like a small library, where you just go in and get the tape, and even the camera would be a VHS camera. But yeah, even though technology has improved, it seems like we're doing less. I see where you have footwork down. I first saw that done with Dennis Vandermeer, where you just film players' feet. I think that's great for parents to hear, but teaching pros as well. Go ahead.
Well, I know I've seen you. I can't remember if I saw it or we were talking about it one time. So I started doing it a few years ago, like just filming a kid doing push-ups. And, I think it's humbling and it's eye-opening for the player. Especially if you can get down there yourself and do a push-up that, is in pretty good form, and you can rip out 10 push-ups yourself, and then to put a 14-year-old down there and they're doing a push-up that, looks like their body is having mild seizures. And, I think it's important to be able to show that kind of stuff. And people forget where they came from. Years ago, I remember, documenting is not just to show the student, it's almost like an attorney kind of covering their rear end with stuff. And, but people just have very short memories. They forget that they were, at a certain point when they walk through the door, and they start to typically have a little success, and they still have a ton of work to do. But I think it's a good way to remind people that, they're in lap one, and there's several more laps to go, and there's where you were, and now it's not time to reset the course. Really, it's just time to stay the course.
Yeah, you got to fight tennis snobbery, where kids get better and then they don't want to hit and help out lesser players. They don't remember where they were. Yeah, I tell people the number one reason I document is no one's going to come back and tell me you didn't improve my game. The Vic Braden thing, as Vic used to say, what game? That kid's got no game. He's lucky to find the bathroom. I've told this story on the podcast before. Jeff Lewis puts this together, where Vic and I did clinics together. It was the first time where I spoke, Vic spoke, and Vic actually he loved the idea of filming and skill testing, and really letting the not only the player but the parent to know truly where the kid is. I mean, if it was a reading level, you feed 25 shots, the kid makes 10, they're at 40%. Let people know that right away. But I think also the tennis teachers have to realize that, sure enough, it can be labor intensive. We'll get the camera out, but it's a lot easier to just roll the ball out and start feeding balls instead of, filming. And even when then you go home and you're creating work, the lesson is done, but yeah, you're going back and added value. You're still providing, additional time, additional effort for the student.
Mm-hmm.
Number 5, film an entire lesson weekly for your viewing. It's interesting with security cameras now. That wasn't so much the case years ago, but a lot of times people are being filmed, they don't even know it. Be critical of your teaching and ask if you would pay for the lesson. Go ahead, comment on that.
Well, and again, I think I got this idea from you in the 80s. But when I went off to, work with Carter, I actually did this. There was a period there where I was, filming. I just set the camera up in the corner and just film my lessons and kind of look at everything that I was doing on a coaching end. How I was feeding, how I was demoing, was I getting the look out of the students in terms of the shapes of the swings and whatever that I wanted to. And I'd try to film varieties of lessons. Sometimes I'd film teaching a group of 6 ladies, just kind of a hit and giggle. But I just wanted to get a feel for what I was doing and how I could get better at it. And so I did that for several years. It's something I think I could go back and do, to be honest. And, but I think it's important to, was I hustling to help with balls? If it was a private lesson, little things. I mean, did I do simple things like say thank you at the end of the lesson? It's easy to fall out of habits. And this thing, I think for me, really helped me understand how far I had to go. And it was also encouraging when you felt like, okay, that was really working. That seemed to be productive in what I was trying to accomplish. But I think that we could, I think everybody can benefit from that, actually critiquing their tennis lesson. We do, and we got to get back to it because COVID changed things and we've fallen out of the habit, but we have a staff training, and we have, senior staff that have really been involved in it for a long time. And we literally, with 24 coaches, I mean, we'll divide up onto 4 courts, and teachers are teaching the teachers, and then we're filming, and then we're critiquing, and the senior person is kind of critiquing how the critique went. And so it helps accelerate the learning, and it helps give everybody an idea of kind of, what we're trying to accomplish as a group of pros. But I think individually it can really help you if you just do it on your own court, see what you look like. And most importantly, at the end, I mean, when you've dialed it in as a coach, and you haven't really given your best effort. And, I think it's kind of hypocritical as a coach to think you can go out and teach a poor hour. And then you ask players to show up every day to practice and give everything and be engaged. And so,
yeah, you made
keeps you honest.
A lot of great points. I love the one to, keep teaching, teach during the ball pickup. That's not a time for the, put the cell phone away and you're not chit chatting with a coach who's working on the next court. Now, here's something that is fantastic. I know with the renovations at your club, you've talked about, what's the name of the indoor court number? What's the number? Is it 10, the covered court you're on?
Well, I used to be on 9. That 9 was the first one there. And now I'm right behind it.
The ball machine.
Yeah, the ball machine. Yeah, that's
is that still there? The ball machine?
Yeah, that's the one I'm on. I'm still on that. Yeah, ball machine's still there, going strong. Yeah.
So you're right next to adjacent that court.
Yeah, it was 13. Now it's number 19.
But this comes from Braden, where you turn the ball machine on, students on the baseline just hitting basic forehands, backhands, and then as soon as the ball comes out of the machine, you stand. You don't block their image, their body, so the camera's capturing both the hitter and the teacher behind. And then the teacher shadow swings. So if it's a first-time player coming out and, they don't have the ready position, the unit turn, the racket's down, and the backswing goes way behind their back. And it's a great way to show the contrast. This is what you're doing, and this is what you need to do. But that, doesn't really cover that much ingenuity. You need a ball machine. If it's going to be just yourself with, no one else helping you out. Many times I have the privilege of having a student assistant helping me. I know you do as well. If you just put up the tripod, and Vic used to have the cameras were built right into the fence, and you would just turn a switch, and the students didn't even know they were being filmed. It was just amazing. But so one is that we say the baseline. The person's on the other side of the net, hitting the ball to your student. So when the ball comes, say the ball machine's feeding it, the ball machine's at line 1, the baseline the ball machine's on. Then the service line is 2. The net would be a line, that's 3. The hitter, the students, their service line is 4. Then the baseline is 5. And, they're just starting to turn when the ball's at the net. Their recognition skills, their reading skills are very slow. Back in the day, we used to have these light, small knapsacks, and people used to teach, and they would carry a tape recorder. And then what they had to do is they had to create, what would you call it, a manuscript of everything they said, just word by word. And tape, not only just not the video, but also the audio. People running a drill session and they're just feeding balls. It's, a lot of times it's just go, turn, move. But to actually listen to yourself, does it make any sense? The word, it'd be critical to be your own best critic.
Yeah, definitely.
Number 6, attend conferences. Join the USPTA PTR. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, you said it for decades. I mean, I don't think it's fair of for anybody to critique anything they really haven't been a part of. And, oftentimes I'll get asked about a coach or some program or something. If I haven't witnessed them in action, if I haven't studied, seen them work, I really can't say much. I can see a result in what they're producing, but it's like with USPTA, USPTRI, USTA. I've served on a lot of different boards for the USTA committees. Been a member of PTA, PTR for a lengthy amount of time, and I think it's important to do. I think it's just a step. It shows you're committed, and going to the conferences. Go to the conferences and go with the idea that if you pick up one thing or two things or three things, it's been a victory. I, like you, I don't know. I've fallen out of it. I mean, I haven't been going to them as I did in my first 20 years of doing this. And I've kind of made that a goal to, I come out to your next conference and start kind of hitting those again. I think myself, like many other people, kind of find ourselves in a state of time poverty, but the reality is, you just have to make time. Got to find it somehow.
With conferences also, actually making contact and see if you can go visit a program,
yeah.
And, I think you can politely ask, is there a fee? I would like to come by. And, people need to know how to be an observer too. You can be, you need to be a passive observer. If someone's teaching, you don't talk to them while they're teaching. Can I just come in and be a fly on the wall and pay a nominal fee or pay a fee? And I don't think enough of that goes on. You've been in Dallas now for so long and had so much success. I'm going to guess not too many people, young pros seek you out, and back in the 70s and 80s, it's like, okay, that was going on. People wanted to come by, and they were just very proactive. I think that's also, being able to stay home and just push the keyboard and think that you're actually being trained via the internet. Now, the internet helps, but it doesn't replace bricks and mortars, actually going to a place.
Yeah, definitely. We have a few former coaches that come down and, still keep their saw sharp, stay connected in that way. And a few guys from the conference we just did down in Austin with Carter, Mike Carter, they have reached out and asked about coming out. So we get it periodically, but not like it was back in the day. No.
With, you mentioned other sports. You can also go to conferences for other sports. Dallas is a city unto itself. Anything and everything is going on in Dallas. If a tennis coach wants to learn about sport, they certainly could go to track and field. They could go to soccer, and doesn't have to be. You're just going to go to the USPTA or PTR conferences.
Definitely.
Number 7.
Yeah, you
go ahead.
Yeah. Number 7.
Go ahead. Stay physically fit. Rigorous teaching schedule demands a healthy lifestyle. You need energy. You just, you can't say it any other way. You need energy. You just, you got to be pumped up. It's, Scotty Perelman, new day, new opportunity to excel. But what comes to your mind? It's physically fit.
Well, I think tennis pros, historically, become very unfit if you're not careful. You can actually have kind of a sedentary lifestyle, coaching, teaching. My dad, I think he went to his grave not even realizing really, I'm not sure he ever accepted tennis as a sport. But I think he thought that I played tennis all day. I think that's what he really thought I did. And, but when you're coaching and teaching, your own game's so far on the back burner, and it doesn't mean you can't play and hit balls and still have goals for yourself. But I think it's very easy to get out of shape if you're coaching and teaching very effectively. And I think you have to make time to stay fit and you know, certainly lead as healthy a lifestyle as you can, because, you know, like you said, I mean, energy creates energy, and you have to be able to bounce when you need to. And it's certainly a lot easier to do that when you're at your fighting weight, and you have a little bit of muscle tone, and you feel if you get put in a situation where you have to stand in a corner even and have people hit balls and you run them around, that you can do that. So I think it's very important. I just think, I mean, not just from tennis, but I think it just helps set the proper example too for a healthy lifestyle for what we're trying to promote with people.
With, staying physically fit for young coaches, especially if they're not leading, I know I've been in a situation for a long, long time where I've got a whistle around my neck and there's a ton of variables. But if you're a support coach, jump right in and do the exercises with the kids. We love to do the Animal Kingdom. You can YouTube Animal Kingdom, and I wouldn't start with a frog jump. I would make sure you only do the duck walk one time to the net. So some kids are going to complain. And Eric Hyden used to do a mile that the speed skater every day before school. But there's a caterpillar, there's a swan, there's the monkey. You go the bear walk, the crab walk, and but if Braden, if you expect your students to do it, you need to do it. Back in the day, I remember my brother became the assistant coach of the New York Rangers, and it's actually comical now to look back what they were asked to do for summer fitness. But just, you're going to get respect from your players. Again, you don't have to be the greatest player. A lot of people get into the sport late, but you're working on running technique, jump in line, and work on running technique. But I do think that the coaches will gather together, and they're looking for a coffee. There's no time for a coffee. I mean, the lesson starts, and it's like, let's go. You just think, but it all ties together. You mentioned character from other sports. Really good football coaches are they're not on coffee break. They need both hands to demonstrate, and it's like, let's go. They got the juice flowing, and there's some intensity being pumped out.
Yeah. So look,
stay connected to the sport. Play tennis, follow tennis, and be able to talk the sport. Go ahead on that one.
Well, I think, going back to conferences, I mean, it seems like one of the biggest highlights of some of the national conferences is the golf outing at our national tennis conferences, USPTA, USPTR. And, I think that's even probably more supported than when they used to have the USPTA tournaments or PTR tournaments. But I think that you got to stay connected to the sport. I mean, it's inspiring to see when you're at a club and see some of your coaches out there working on their games, basically walking down the same path that they're trying to get you to walk down, to keep hitting balls, follow tennis, have awareness of what's going on in the tennis industry, in the tennis world. I'm kind of shocked that so many people in the sport of tennis making a living out of it really don't follow it that much, and therefore are unable to talk about the sport to people. And I think that all of that kind of is more of a newer phenomenon, where maybe it wasn't so much like that. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I feel like it wasn't, but I think that this kind of disconnect, it makes it challenging for these younger pros to not walk away from the sport, and maybe say, I'll give teaching pickleball a try too, or padel, and this and that. And I think when you're connected to something, your loyalty to it is going to get stronger and stronger. And I just think your students can feel it. I think the people around you can feel it. And I always use the expression. I think you got to bleed the sport. If they cut you, your blood should you should have a little tennis in your blood.
Yeah, get some blood in the game. With Peter Burwash, I love the idea. The late Peter Burwash. Be 2% selfish and work on your own game. So when you're feeding, you're demonstrating. Braden was a master of that. He wanted, Dennis Vandermeer too. I mean, they definitely were. They're going to be able to demonstrate well. Yeah, it's interesting to me. I've been talking to some people recently about a sparring partner, and people have heard me say, you want a sparring partner realizes that they're just a sparring partner. In boxing, the sparring partner wears a helmet and a mouth guard, and they don't say anything. But the tennis sparring partner, they start to talk. They say something when they have nothing to say. But a sparring partner should be able to mimic playing styles. Hey, this is, someone's going to loop the ball. Someone's going to play, this pattern or this variation. But that only comes from what you've got down here, is that you have to be able to talk the sport. I think, like say in Ash Barty, the rate of forgetting is scary. People should not, we're talking about carry the torch for the people of the past on the tennis teaching side, but the players, I think, people in general, Ash Barty retired, but she was such a complete player. Could play all zones of the court, could play doubles. And also too now, it's all at your fingertips with YouTube. But you could look up Ash Barty. I do think that, the coaches as well as the parents, everybody is like, well, I've got my own thing I can do on my phone. I mean,
yeah.
I did this one time with a group of juniors. I took them by, I had a place for 3 years right next to the USDA National Campus, Lake Nona. And actually, Francis Tiafoe was kind of cool. He would buy a skateboard. He was listening to some music with a headset. But I said, all right. We're going to park right here. It was one of those Chipotle runs. Everybody likes to go to Chipotle. And I said, we're going to stand right here. School's going to get out. And we're going to count how many kids walk by. And everybody's got their tally. And we're going to count how many kids walk by and how many kids are just looking at their telephone. They're safe. They're on the sidewalk. They're not going to get hit by a car. And it was amazing.
Yeah.
I just read an article where, not letting, can you imagine that? Not letting kids in elementary and junior high look at their cell phone during the day. Just be, it didn't exist before. So the rule didn't have to be in place, but, I think many people just shut it down. The lesson's over, they're done. And, even when they play a match, there's no reflective thought, two types of thought, reactive, reflective. And that's, that's for the teaching pro. Same thing with a lesson. How's it go? The person taught 30 years, but they only had 1 year experience because they kept doing the same thing. And, the camaraderie among pros and, is there a chit chat on, what are we doing? How could we do it better? Number 9, on a weekly basis, teach a number of pro bono lessons. Why don't you tell us what that is? Give back to tennis, give back to people. Pro bono.
Well, I think that it's important to figure out how you can, find time in your life to, teach tennis without any monetary reward. There's people out there that, a private lesson is costly, and and picking somebody who maybe isn't capable of funding it, or picking somebody who is really earned it, and just taking them and giving them additional time through the course of your week. I think it's important. It's the right thing to do. Not only it's a funny thing because I've done it my whole life, and there's a freedom to it. I think from a teaching standpoint. And I don't mean that you give it half an effort or anything, but there's just a beauty to it. And I think it helps you as a teacher really appreciate what it is that you get to do each day. I highly recommend it. I think that if you run a program, it's also important to, try to reach out in the community and offer some scholarship assistance to some people that really need it, that, you can really make a difference in their life by giving them an opportunity to play the sport of tennis and kind of getting behind them and changing lives. A little different than the backroom deal where you are out recruiting some high level players to try to draw people in. I think it's the other end of that, but I think it's very important.
With the term pro bono, I know it's a freebie. Curious, I never really researched that, where that term comes from. Do you have any idea off the top of your head, pro bono?
No, I mean, I know that you hear it more in conjunction with lawyers
right.
and attorneys doing pro bono work, but I'm not sure of the source of it. But
yeah,
that might be a good thing for Andres. I'm going to actually run into him, I think, maybe down in Miami next week.
Okay, you going down to the Orange Bowl?
I'm going to go down on Wednesday for just 2 days.
Exceed expectations, added value. I think when it comes down to going beyond the call of duty, don't just teach by looking at the clock. And, you greet people and you know them, and, maybe they're not, one of your students, but they're one of your fellow pro students, and you know their name, and you say, how's your tennis going? And are you after it? And, I think, not looking like what's in it for me, just be that cash register pro.
Even if it's just giving a tip when you walk by courts. I mean, I always tell our staff, I mean, it's nonstop, the action, and, to walk by the courts and just say, hey, do you mind if I share something with you? And I mean, most people, it really means a lot to them. And we have just so much opportunity for that. And I think everybody does, really. And in my case, I teach right next to a ball machine. I mean, I hate to see somebody get, to use your phrase, they keep getting better at getting worse. So the person on the ball machine is almost guaranteed a lesson. They're going to get a tip almost every time. And I always tell our coaches when they walk by there, you don't have to say much, but say something to somebody that's hitting the ball in a way that isn't helping them, and try to get them on the right track.
Yeah. I mean, Braden, I can remember I was fortunate to be a hitting partner for Tim Gullickson, and with, there's a player 3 courts down, and, next thing you know is Gully and I are hitting on the court, and Vic's 3 courts down helping a junior. That was just Braden, is that, the person has a problem with your game. And of course he had the personality to pull it off. You got to be upbeat and go, hey, I was watching you play. If you could just try to do this, and don't come across like you're, hustling someone for another lesson. Chapter of my life was going to the Battle of Boca. Great service is right there. It's, every weekend, and, sure enough, okay, there could be doubles. They could not play shortened matches. The entry fee could be less, but it's a great service to the public. And there's so many people handing out business cards, and everything's $100 an hour. I used to love to listen to Ziggy Ziegler. Had a lot of his tapes, a motivational speaker, so funny. And he used to tell a story about 2 guys went to work for the railroad, and one guy was still, doing basically the same job he started with, and the other guy was president of the railroad. And they asked the gentleman, how did his friend become president? You both started at the same time. He goes, oh, that's easy. I worked for $1.75 an hour, and he worked for the railroad. I mean, you really work, you really, in a lot of ways, I tell young people, you work for yourself. You don't think that you really have a boss. You work for yourself. But also, too, is you need to work for tennis. It'll always come back to you. If you go the distance, it'll always come back to you. And I think also the psychic income for the tennis teaching professional, if they're not really pumped up to have their students get better, they're going to be pretty flat. I think there's in the past, you say a lot of people teaching tennis that want to sell real estate, and a lot of people selling real estate that want to teach tennis. Another analogy I've used is that, maybe because I did this so much when I was a kid, is mowed lawns. It's hot, it's sweaty, it's noisy, and you're out there in the heat, the outdoor season, and it's like, if you're not competent, you're pushing the lawnmower, it doesn't have a blade. So then you're done, and there's not a sense of accomplishment. I've also said too that watching tennis players improve is like watching paint dry. It's like watching grass grow. It doesn't happen, in leaps and bounds. I think it does initially when you're meeting a student for the first time, that it's pretty easy for them to make technical changes in a technical setting. But no, I think that's a great tip. I've done this mostly with players, but it works with teaching pros as well. As the song "I Me," just say "I me, I me." That's the junior tennis song. But I think also too is that too many people are thinking "I me, I me." What's in it for what's in it for me, instead of what's in it for the good of the game. And tennis, we all need to help tennis, and everybody needs to say, what can I do extra? That's going one step further. How about number 10? This is one I think I could understand. Follow the GreatBase Tennis Intelligence Applied, Facebook, Instagram, podcasts, workshops, observation.
Yeah. I mean, I can't understand why somebody inside of the tennis teaching, coaching profession wouldn't delve into it and just, really dive into it and just go. And, but anyone who does do it and will come out of it different and better, and really set, I think, themselves on a coaching and teaching path that is far more enjoyable, far more productive. And I think the productivity is why it'll be more enjoyable. It's fun to see people improve. And, but it's so critical that, when I say dive into it, you can't wade into it, and just go knee deep and then walk out of it and think, you have the experience. You have to, you mentioned the word, that you use, the immersion, when people come in to take part in it as a player, typically coming to see you. And it's the same thing. And I think it goes back and ties into, the second point that we talked about, developing an obsession with learning. And, it's a great method to acquire a lot of the science and the art. And then from there, that's a starting point. And it's now up to the individual to, on a daily basis, try to, figure out how to use all those things and apply them. But it's a plan, it's a map that can get you going in a very positive direction.
With let's flip it and go on the don'ts, but that's a great point to end the do's with. Assume that your playing experience has prepared you for a career in teaching tennis and coaching tennis. Now that's one close to my heart. Go ahead, give us a few comments on that one.
Well, we talked about it a little bit before, how a majority of people who get into this, especially right out of college, it's just a transition for them to suddenly get into coaching tennis, And, the playing experience and all of the things they may have done, from a young age up to age 22, 23, it certainly hasn't been a negative, but it's by no means prepared one to teach and coach effectively, because historically what it's going to do is the person's only going to teach and coach as they recall how they were taught or coached. And their memory of that usually isn't even very effective. And it usually just falls back on their most recent memory of maybe when they came out of college tennis, where, the kind of generic workout that might take place on so many college campuses, not all of them, but where they're dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds who are at a different stage of life, different, situation, and they're hitting cross courts and doing high lows at the net and then playing some points and things of that nature. That's not really going to ready somebody to delve into the teaching and coaching profession. And I think that's why they end up migrating to being primarily third base coaches, where they realize, again, nobody wants to be put in a situation where they're exposed. And so you can be less exposed the more advanced players that you grab hold of. Your skills can be, your skill sets as a teacher and coach can be hidden actually much easier the more advanced players that you work with. And I think you have said that before. And I think that, you got to come into it with a lot of humility. Doesn't mean you have to lack belief or in yourself or confidence or anything, but just humility, that because number one on the don'ts ties into number one on the do's, and that is set your course to serve some sort of apprenticeship for a significant amount of time while you enter into the career.
No, it's well put. I think with ego comes into it. Just because you played the game doesn't mean that you can teach the game. It certainly is a bonus. That's where Welby Van Horn, arguably the best, you're right up there, most notable career as both a player and a teacher, but I didn't say player and coach. Welby, the way he introduced the game to beginners with body balance is just, I've never seen anything better. And he had the track record to improve that. Enter the profession focused only on working with high performance players. This is a major problem in tennis. Diversify your schedule and you will do better long term. All levels, all ages groups, and privates. Go ahead on that one.
I think it's important. I think that, I don't want to mention names, but I'm in the process of trying to acquire a couple more people on staff. And, in this day and time, you have to kiss a lot of frogs to try to get a prince. And so I had a player in here the other day, a candidate rather. And, I had him involved in our program, online school program, which goes during the day with, tournament level kids. And I said, well, you can take a break and then meet me back here at 4:30, and I'll have you observe the early childhood program and some of the grassroots stuff. And the guy looked at me and said, I don't do little kids. And we have a need for a guy like that actually just wants to bang balls. Believe me, we could actually use somebody like that. But I think that's just a common attitude these days. And but diversifying your schedule, I think, is how you learn to teach. I think it's, I look at some of the coaches that have helped my wife here over the last 3 years and watch her hit a backhand. And, it's impressive. They've done great work with her. And, they can really teach tennis, and I trust them with any tournament level kid that I have. But I think that, the more diversity you have in your schedule, especially when you're early on in your career, the better you're going to learn to teach the game. I think the group dynamics, the knowing when to work within a player's game. I mean, you might have 6 ladies out there, and learning to give tips and trying to mold people in a different way, because there's just so many ways to apply the information. And I think that's the only way to do it is through diversification of your schedule.
Yeah, with your schedule too, as I think, Willie Schutte a phone call, Coffee with Willie. He called me the other day. He got a telephone tag. Need to get a hold of him, and he got the people my age, early in the morning out there having coffee with Willie. Make it happen. Fill the courts. Be a Pied Piper. I think 1 and 2 really tie in with each other. I think the analogy. Well, I'm a reading instructor, but I only work with fast readers. I don't mess with slow readers. And it's like, shut up. I mean, if really, you got to be able to teach a beginner. I mean, as you said earlier, it's all one and the same, and a forehand's a forehand. But what they want to do is want to be a glorified sparring partner. I think far too often here in the U.S. is the director of tennis. They're the ones with a salary. They're the ones getting a percentage from what the pros teach many times. And, they're just on center court and they're hitting with a kid they think's pretty good. And pretty good usually means pretty bad. It's like, okay, I mean, we know that small cities and large clubs, they don't, for the most part, produce 1 college tennis player per year. And, what's the production? And I don't think it's right to say, well, we're just trying to raise good members. If people sign up for a tennis lesson, it can be a recreational path, but the competency is the same. It's just the pace of the lesson or the intensity of the lesson. Maybe it doesn't involve as much character 101, but it's still high, low, high, inside out, long hitting zone, using your body parts properly. With then also learning to communicate. I think it's great for, say, an entry-level pro where, they are conversing with adults. It used to be, you can go way back, Steve Robertson, who was a guest on our podcast, Gen Z, and now we're to the Gen Alpha. And it used to be that 3 generations would be in one room watching a ball game, or, maybe it's the news or a movie. And now it's like kids don't even greet adults. So, if someone is, how's it go? If someone's an uncoachable kid, they're going to be unemployable as well. So interacting and also bringing a tennis culture, a tennis community to the forefront, where it's up to the coaches that they're all introducing each other to the clientele. And I don't really like that word. Well, these are my clients. But so if they don't have a diversified schedule, they're in the end, well, okay, you're only talking to 15 people at the club, and they're just 15 perhaps advanced juniors instead of talking to everybody. Nick Bollettieri, there are a lot of pluses about the late Bollettieri is, to really to connect with the moms and connect with everybody, the whole family. Don't teach only when paid. You touched upon that. You will not develop the coaching myelin needed to master your skills. 50 to 60 hours weekly, your first 20 years will help solidify your pathway. Doug Cash, smart man, cash flow tennis. So much about the business side of tennis. Maybe it's changed, but it was, I think 55 hours a week, day and a half off. And, at least 35 hours minimum of that should be on the court. Are you a producer or parasite? Are you producing, or are you just living off the game? But that's a healthy amount of hours, 56 hours weekly, coaching myelin. I don't think people think it that way. Why do you comment on your number 3? We lost him, listeners. Hang on. Hello, Dave?
Hello.
Hey, Davey Anderson,
Yo.
coaching
Did you
Milan.
cut me off?
Yeah, you hung up
Cut me
on
off.
me. You hung up on me. Freddie Foreman called you and hung up on me. Hey, coaching Milan, touch upon
Yeah,
that and go forward.
I think that it ties in with a lot of the other things that we've talked about. That you got to be obsessed with learning. If you only look to get knowledge and learning and experience when you're getting paid, you're not going to get there quick enough. You won't gain what you need. I also think that it just when you're early on um, in your career path as a tennis teacher and or coach, you should just really live on the court. It's just a mentality of getting there and just teaching. And you might have gaps in your schedule. That's where you can grab a banana out of your packed lunch and pull a student aside and just continue to teach. And 50 to 60 hours a week is, to me, very reasonable for anybody. Over 6 days, I mean, that's, between 8 and 10 hours a day. And, good things will happen if you, from the standpoint of taking care of yourself too. I mean, people notice that stuff and they'll notice the passion and you'll eventually become a very sought after coach in all likelihood if you do a good job of it. And, but I just think it's critical. If that's your goal to try to become the best teacher and coach you can become, I don't think it can be done any other way personally.
No, I agree.
I think you can become pretty good. Yeah. But
pretty good is pretty bad. I've been aghast to coach, a clinician at your place, Brookhaven Country Club, Dallas, everyone. Beautiful, beautiful place. It's like a tennis village unto itself. I've had so many coaches at your place tell me, no one can work like Dave. I go, I can. And they don't even hear me say that. I can, but they're stuck on no one can work like Dave. And I said, sun gets up, he's on the court. Sun goes down, he's off the court, basically. And I said, when you're not giving a lesson, don't go across the street and, have a muffin. Is just go sit on his court. And, certainly if you have to do some emails, now they can do it on their phone. And yeah, I guess the best thing to do is to just be around it. You got to love it. Got to love it. I was thinking of Patrick Gibson the other day. I went to do a clinic in North Carolina at this beautiful place, Cary Park. And, at that time, he lived I understand his parents now live in Raleigh, but he lived a good distance away, right within North Carolina, maybe 45 minutes away, but he was staying with his grandparents. And so I show up to do this clinic. He's 11 years old. He was being coached by Matt Clore. And I said, "You're not playing today?" And he said, "No, my grandparents told me I need rest. I have to watch." I said, "So you're just watching?" And I mean, that's passion. That's passion. And you have to watch people teach tennis. You have to. I mean, how are you going to get better at it? And it's mind-boggling how so few places have any type of continuity, common denominators, any orientation. What is a three-legged stool? Divide players from parents.
Yeah, that's on the don'ts. Don't try to divide the players from their parents. Instead, try and develop the three-legged stool. The journey. Of really junior tennis. If you're involved heavily in coaching, teaching juniors, and it seems like it's very challenging, right? Everything, and I think that I've made the mistake historically, especially years back, and you might make some loose comments, and I think that dividing players from their parents, meaning trying to anything that's a blame game, and I see that a lot inside of the junior game. You were talking about how parents talk about coaches talk about parents, but I think the more that that the roles can be clear, Again, going back to Jim Lair's book, player, parent, coach handbook, and getting that thing working in alignment, and rather than fighting each other. Kids are clever. They'll try to use coaches as a sounding board and get them to speak up and, almost kind of come onto their side against parents often. I found in junior tennis. And then, they're doing the same thing back home to you. So, the 10 do's and don'ts for parents a few weeks back, and now this one for teachers and coaches, we really should have a similar list for players.
Yeah, and administrators too.
Exactly.
The whole gamut. But the three-legged stool is a triangle. It's getting the parent, the player, and the teaching pro on the same page.
Yeah, just balancing the stool.
Here's a good one. Don't teach the flavor of the month. I can remember Tennis Magazine back in the day, and this is a concern. It used to be like a small telephone book. It was thick, and it used to be where there could be one article on the forehand that would contradict another article on the forehand in the same magazine. And people would be, flavor of the month. Use fact-based principles as your foundation and build your coaching house. Want to comment on that for a second?
Well, I think the flavor of the month has been exacerbated because of the cell phone and the access to YouTube and Instagram and what have you. And, it's worse now, in my opinion, than it ever has been. And, if somebody's hot on the tour, people trying to mimic it. And, I always go back to that period where, you look at Agassi, look at Sampras, and in some ways they didn't have as great an impact as people. And then you look at the impact like Tiafoe had, or Dominique Thiem before he made adjustments on his forehand with his racket almost horizontal to the ground above his head on his backswing on his forehand. And it's funny how people will copy something because it's quirky, and because of this flavor of the month, because the player looks cool, or they may hit the ball a little harder, or what have you. And then coaches, I think, buy off on that as well, and that's how they go about their career, and they kind of just ebb and flow between those things, depending on what's hot and what's not. And I really, to be honest, I feel like those kind of that approach to coaching and teaching leads one to a very unfulfilled career, and possibly burnout. You're not going to see the results. You're not going to, be able to feel good about what you do day in and day out.
And burnout, the frustration factor, the other name for it is can't burn out if you catch on fire. But yeah, we do use that term. Flavor of the month. I mean, there's supremacy. Well, if some kids, on the boys' side, especially the macho male ego, someone played D1 tennis, they think they're a better coach than someone played D2 tennis. I mean, it just gets downright stupid. But something else that is really stupid. I mean, it's so important. Okay, let's look at the pros that impact. And when we talk about pros, we're saying, okay, let's learn from the pros. It's not like, well, the pros should they should change their games. But I'm always telling people, remember, we're not teaching pros. Like, for example, on the backhand, the two-handed backhand, we know that the pros have a continental grip on the bottom hand, and the left, say a righty, the left hand really dominates the hypertrophy in the forearm, muscle expansion. But no, we're going to get the grip on the right side of one. We're talking about a fraction of an inch, because it's going to help close the racket head, and that's what they're going to do, so they don't swing east and west on their underspin backhand, their slice, and then they're not going to avoid the net because they have such a weak grip. I love this next one. Live the same day twice.
Yeah. So I think it's critical. I mean, I think it's important from a motivational standpoint for somebody to wake up in the morning and, have the approach like they're, even it's not like you're going just to teach tennis. I mean, there's just always something new to be done inside of each student, even if you see them each and every day. And even if it's a similar thing that you're doing, I'll never forget something that Fran Kruger, Ashlyn Kruger's mom, said to me a few years back. Because, each day we were just repping out the same reps. And I said, hey, I think that's why she is who she is and has a great chance to make it is, she's willing to come out here each day and just go through this. And I said, that's rare. That's hard to find. And I don't say this in an egotistical way or anything, but the mom said, yeah, it's actually harder to find a coach that wants to. And, it kind of hit me there. You got to get excited to do some things that are similar, but you can't live the same day twice. You've got to have an exploring mind in how you go about it. And you've got to go in with the attitude of you might have to do some of the same things, but you're going to progress, and it's going to alter the way the day is compared to yesterday.
Well, yeah, you got to work like a gardener. You got to get down on your hands and knees, and certainly you and I have been primarily in the kid business. So actually, since we've been kids, but don't let the kid grow like a weed. I mean, that growth mindset.
Mm-hmm.
The growth mindset. I mean, there's got to be growth of the student, and it's constant evolvement, but also it's the growth of the tennis teacher and. Experience, great teacher, and case study is like you say, don't live the same day twice. Is every situation, every match, it's like a book unto itself, and a lesson. There's no such thing as just another lesson. The person's not thinking that way. I think sometimes people, junior tennis players can have too many lessons and they get lessoned out and they don't appreciate the lesson. But that's a great one. This is great as well. Number 7, self-promote, sell tennis first. So don't self-promote, sell tennis first.
Yeah. And like, in my lifetime in the sport, as somebody who enjoyed it as a junior and also somebody who's been fortunate to have it as his career. I think it's never more important for anybody right now in tennis to get out and we got to sell tennis. And, good things happen. We have 25 pros and I really feel pretty good about the culture of it now, and that, 24, 25, I can't remember, but I always tell the pros, talk the other pros up. When you're talking with people, just talk the other pros up. Talk about their, the other pros' strong points, how well they do something. And I think that it is a little bit different. I think that many places it's self-promoting, and you have to do a little bit of that. I get it, but I don't know. I think it's a very classy way to go about it. Self-promoting is happening pretty much at every tournament you go to. Handing out cards and people being preyed on by, coaches. I mean, when the kid double faults and they see the parent put their head, hands on their head and they walk up to him and say, "Is that your son or daughter?" And, "Oh, do they not hit a lot of serves at their practices where they're at?" And blah, blah, blah. And next thing you know, they're offering them to come out and try the program. And people are such easy prey at these things because of the emotion and the lack of education. Like you said, it takes 10 years, 1,000 hours a week to be a good player, good coach. And it takes a lot of years to become really sound as a tennis parent too. And by the time you do get there, the kid's out of junior tennis. And, but self-promoting, it has, in my opinion, a shelf life. And, I think that eventually it catches up with people. If you sell tennis and you make that your number one priority, I think you can, I don't think that has a shelf life, and it's good for the sport.
Yeah, I'd have to go way back. I may have been with you. Let's see, or Sugo Zobasset. I mean, when's the last time I had a business card? Yeah, I don't have a business card. In fact, the way it works for me, I think, I'm privileged that my former students send me students and such. But yeah, people have to find us. We don't find them. But it's unfortunate. And also, too, is that not only they're selling, but they're, as you said earlier, the well, actually, it's next. I mean,
Yeah.
merchant of flesh. I mean, they're at tournaments, and let's lead right into that. The murky waters. Let me read it first. Don't be a merchant of flesh at tennis tournaments. It was often not ethical or healthy for the players and parents navigating through murky waters. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of alluded to that earlier. It just, emotions are so high at tennis tournaments. It seems like way more than I remember them being. But I think we, as a group of people, um, there's almost an ethical responsibility to the profession to not do that. And I always tell our coaches when we inherit a kid that remember they're coming from somewhere else, and there's usually two sides to every story. And you don't know about really what happened until the honeymoon period is over with people. And I've had Billy Freer, who passed away recently and ran this tennis operation here as the director for many years. But he was pretty steadfast on this particular topic in regard to not wanting us to ever take the low road on that kind of thing at tournaments. And I'll be at one. I'll check it out and report back to you on it. But this weekend, and I just don't think it's healthy. I just think it's there's just something kind of I don't know. I get a kind of a bad feeling in my stomach about it when I think about people being approached at tournaments. And if somebody approaches you, that's a different animal, I guess. But the poor parents it is murky waters. I mean, they don't really know some of the dangers that lie in the waters, and to prey on that, I think it's just a very, very unethical thing.
We had Casey Curtis on as a guest. He loves tennis, and he's definitely a character coach, and he's going to get out there and work hard. And we're not really connected with backgrounds or how do you teach the forehand, how do you not teach the forehand, what have you. But I was in that Boca Raton area where I spent time with you in Boca Raton, and a mom called Casey Curtis up and was asking about lessons and said, "Who do you work with?" And the mom said, "Steve Smith." And Casey said, "You don't need to come and see me. Just keep working with Steve Smith." That doesn't usually happen. That's it's hustle, baby, hustle. But if it shouldn't really be that way. I mentioned cherry pick. That to me, that's a Wayne Bryan tip, or term. The father of the Bryan brothers. Some kid gets to the point where they're really good, and then the governing body of tennis, the USTA, that since 1987 now they've been in the player development business. Prior to that, they were not. But why don't you comment on the local scene? So you and your staff do a very good job getting people to hit the ball. Just within Dallas, I mean, a lot of neighboring academies are looking for your students, correct?
Yeah, I think we seem to be inheriting a lot of players here lately for some reason from other places throughout the city. But yeah, through the years, for sure, they were often targeted. A lot of the, again, to use that term, dirty work had been done, and it's kind of an attractive package for people. But I also think that the same thing with coaches. There's there's a similar kind of approach often with the coaches, because I think the coaches that come out of your environment, that have the background that where they've been trained, and I think they've been cherry picked as well, so to speak. And oftentimes everybody has that desire to spread their wings and check out the other side of the fence, and I guess you just gotta nod your head and let them go. But usually there's been a little bit of a seduction that's taken place with players and or coaches in that regard.
Number 9, cancel lessons, miss work responsibilities, or turn down a lesson request. I love this line. Your reliability is a superpower. Use it wisely.
Yeah. Going back to just thinking about some of the opportunities I had and listening to Dennis Vandermeer when you remember that horrible ice storm when he came in back in, 87, 88, whenever I was illegally working on staff for you for $750. And
overpaid.
Yeah. But I remember him saying, I remember it was a horrible ice storm in Dallas and in East Texas. And you sent me for some reason to the airport to get him in Dallas from Tyler. And it literally took about 6 hours to get to Dallas, and then probably another 6 back. And then we did that clinic in Longview, if you remember. But I think he took note of that, and he didn't reference it because he wasn't surprised, because it was coming from an environment you were responsible for. So he wasn't surprised by it. But I remember him telling the group of coaches from Tennis Tech that, unless you're bleeding out of your ear, show up. And I think that was verbatim. And I think that's really how it should be. I mean, I just kind of I had the good fortune of kind of growing up. I think I made my share of mistakes, believe me, but that was just kind of our mentality at our house growing up. And I think that in this day and time, you can get a long, long, long ways in terms of having respect and going far in your career if you just don't cancel lessons, and if you don't miss your responsibilities that you're supposed to do at work. And never, I still to this day have, I've got to learn to say no. It's hard for me to say no to people. If they want to learn, I like to teach, so it's kind of a good fit, and just don't turn down a lesson request. And if it's a Sunday, I remember starting here 30 years ago after leaving Boca with where we were. And I used to drive in from Allen, which is a long ways from Brookhaven, on a Sunday to teach an hour to Rob Langdon, who was about a 3.0 man. But that's, good things. That's how nothing starts big, and you got to build it, and you build it from really what I think is the greatest superpower for people, and that is reliability and consistency. And it's something that separates, I believe. We all as coaches love students that are reliable and they're consistent. And boy, I think people, I can't tell you the number of pros that I've had in my lifetime that I've worked around or have worked here with me, for me. And they may be great guys, but the people they teach have told me they want to go a different direction, and they're just hesitant to tell them because they cancel lessons too often, and they're late a little bit for the lessons, and so I think it's a very important thing. Plus, it's just a good quality to have, and people remember you by when you're gone.
Yeah, you just don't want to be called lazy. Up here in the mountain, I went out and I bought, instead of buying a really expensive jacket out of the ski shop to get a healthy percentage off, I bought 2 jackets. They're pretty nice, but about a blue one, which is acceptable in many places, but the blue one will go over the orange one. I brought one. I mean, I look like a walking pylon. But sometimes,
Hmm.
there's fog on the mountain, and it's like, no, we're a half mile away, and like, no, I'm walking. You know, and granted, the van's got to go back and forth with players with equipment. We only have we have a visiting coach, as I said, from Lithuania, and a visiting player with their parents from Canada, and it's like, let's go. It's just like we got a workshop with 40, 50 coaches, and I used to have a job with Vic Braden. With my job was to put chairs away. So if say he had a full weekend with 72, and for some reason he had didn't happen very often, but he had a small group on Monday, he didn't want to have a classroom with empty chairs. So we actually have a Vic Braden chair at the table, one of those deck chairs or captain's chairs,
Hmm.
director's
Hmm.
chairs. And, but he went in with it, okay, this is a new day. It doesn't matter if there's one or there's 100 people in the room. Someone who I spent time with at your facility and many other facilities, Sujay Lamy, was on a couple of weeks ago, and we're
Hmm.
trying to edify Dennis Vandermeer. So you would know Jenkins 115. So we always had an old auditorium. Um, Probably 90 people could sit in that room, 70 anyway, quite a few. But
Yeah.
I anytime I had a lab, I always had that class, because if it rained, I had to have a place to go with this huge program we had, which actually got to be over 100 at one time. So Dennis
Hmm.
and I were walking. Okay, Dennis. Okay, we're gonna cover doubles, and we'll meet. And where are we going, Steve? With J115, and everybody's walking up, and I was with Dennis at the end of the parade. So 100 plus students, and there's some McDonald's wrappers, and they're on right by the sidewalk, and I just, excuse me, and Dennis was talking to me, and I went off the sidewalk a little bit, picked up the McDonald's wrappers, and threw them away. And so, and then we got up to the classroom. It was just great. He said, "We're not talking about doubles now." He goes, "There's only one of you that I would hire," and he goes, "Every one of you walk by." Dennis, it's not my job, man. It's not my job. It is your job.
Hmm.
If you're, you walk by some garbage at the tennis facility, you pick it up. And, I think of Munihiro Yoshida, the son of a billionaire and very successful guy. And, it was so important for him when a junior would come out of the washroom that they had wiped down the counter. And, he would periodically, let me go ahead and see that counter. Yeah, those are life lessons, I think, that young juniors are losing out on, but young juniors become teaching pros. That evolution.
Hmm.
Let's go with number 10. Don't ever take for granted the impact of a teacher, coach can have on a young person. You'll either be a molder of dreams or an architect of destruction. Great coaches change the trajectory of students' lives. That's worth reading again. Don't ever take for granted the impact of a teacher, coach can have on a young person. You'll either be a molder of dreams or an architect of destruction. Great coaches change the trajectory of a student's life or students' lives. That's a great one to end on. What do you got there? Davey Anderson, Minot, North Dakota.
Well, I mean, I'm on the phone right now making a living in tennis because I ran into you. And, I want to give credit to Jerry Lyon, who, was my childhood coach as well from, age 8 to when you got a hold of what a mess I was. But, it's just true. I mean, we all have an opportunity to really, change people and make not only their day better, their time with you better, but alter the direction, the trajectory of their life. And, to be able to use tennis as a vehicle to do that. And at the same time, to be an architect of destruction, I think that people would think of that as us using, being too harsh, doing whatever. But the reality is it might be allowing kids with, some sort of flaw inside of their character or behavior that goes unchecked that ends up costing them down the road. And, so I think if you go into it realizing, not to put pressure on yourself, but going into it realizing that, there's, obviously the importance of teaching the player to the best of your ability to get them to have the best chance to be a gold medalist in their body, to use a Vic Braden term. But it also carries far beyond into the years when you may not even be in contact with them 15, 20 years later. And we plant a lot of seeds as coaches. And we're not always there to see the crop, come into fruition. But, I think that just knowing that you're planting the right seeds and you did all you could to take care of it in the time you were there, and knowing that the crop will come sometime. And I don't know, to me, it's pretty fun. I think it's certainly the reason I set my alarm and get up every morning and do what I do. And I think it's motivating to me.
No, it's great to hear. Great words. How's it go? Life is tennis. Tennis is life, and all the problems in life are problems in tennis. With and I think don't take for granted the opportunity to be in tennis. Don't take the opportunity to be a teacher, and as you said with this last point, to touch someone's life. This has been a lot of great common sense. I guess we could end with a little more common sense. We certainly, you're a big part of it, been, part of it now for 40 some years, is we've been taught through these pillars we have to teach very efficient tennis. And I just want to come back to Freddie Foreman with, don't you really think that because, he started tennis late and he didn't play tennis as early as you did, but he was superior in every other sport, that don't you really think all these years later, even if he's only just practicing a little bit, that it'll be one-sided? It'll be Freddie dominates Davey. What do you think?
Well, you kind of contradicted yourself a second ago, because you said we were going to end with common sense, and then you used Freddie Foreman's name in the next sentence.
Actually, listeners, you just have to hear that. If Freddie were to listen to this, for me, it would just be just to see Freddie laugh. He would just love it that I was giving you the gears. But
he was a good wrestler. He was a runner-up in state. I think he wrestled whatever the lightest weight was. He was a toothpick, 105 maybe.
No,
so, in wrestling, he was tiny, but he was a good wrestler. But the other sports, I would say he's a natural athlete, but he was second in the field of two with me in the other sports. You can go down the list, and I'll just check off number two in his.
I do remember the time TK Gorman gym, rainy day. It's like, all right, Anderson, you and Foreman out here and wrestle, and you certainly held your own. But
I did hold my own, but I had a little weight on him, and I got to start in the up position. But he was,
Here's a TK Gorman story for you. So we had those South Africans, Costa Scapalitis and John Lofty-Diaga.
Mm-hmm.
And they came over, and Russell Seymour, that really helped Craig Tiley, because, Craig was a South African student, and he got connected with these top juniors. And but these guys, maybe it's changed, but at that time, the South Africans, those two South Africans in particular, they weren't very good basketball players. And even though soccer is not really one of the school sports, they were very good soccer players. So I said, all right, you know the story. So I said, all right, I put two sports together. And this came up before, the lane in front of the hoop. And that's
we call it the paint. Yeah.
So anyway, it turned into rugby as well, because it was all right, play soccer in the gym, the rest of the gym, but once the ball gets in the lane, play basketball. And then it just became a scrum. And I love telling that story.
Yeah, Diago was a big kid.
Just diving for that basketball, and then you get that close to the basket, you got a chance of getting it in. But one story leads to another story. But hopefully our listeners, add this to their story, and it helps them, the tennis teaching professionals that are listening, helps them be a little bit better, but also helps them help their staff be a little bit better. Or someone who's new coming to the game be a little bit better. So teaching needs to exist in every facet of the game. But listeners, thanks for hanging in there. And Dave Anderson, thanks for more of your time. It's great to have you help us with this podcast. Yeah,
Yvonne, we'll see you later as well.
Yvonne Lendl. All right. Number one.
Okay.
He was in the U.S. Open finals for 8 years.
Unbelievable.
But our Yvonne's better. All right. Good night, listeners. Adios, amigos. Thank you.
All right.
Davey.
Thanks, Steve.
Yep.
Bye.
Hanging up on Anderson. I guess I've already said adios, amigos, listeners. I can say it again. But thank you very much. Thanks, Dave, for the time. Yvonne, everybody making this happen. And thanks for the listeners. Good night.